When you look on the internet, there are urban legends about a lot of stories and videos and pictures that are cursed, that make you die or have these cursed things that happen to you. And this story itself is actually something in that realm. It is called Wormparty.ogg. Now, when I first started looking at this, I had no idea what the OGG was, and I realized after looking into it is actually a video codec that is being produced for this video. It is actually a real codec in real life, and it is actually plays a role because it actually is referenced that if this video is converted to a different codec, it loses its the dangerousness to it, and that the people who are listening to it might have a headache, but they don't have the significant symptoms that the other video has. So if the video would be dangerous, it actually has to be the OGG codec, making it a little bit more fitting for why the title is this. Now, the video that is actually being referenced in the story is actually included within the story itself and actually has a actual video to it. If you go through and you listen to the story, you can hear what sounds like breathing, seems to be unknown language, someone talking. There's a ton of distortion within it. Even at the end, it caught me off guard and hurt my ears, to be honest. And there's a lot of this very distorted opera-like singing, very angelic kind of style to it. But the very interesting part is that these sounds are supposed to invoke this deadly feeling within you. You find yourself feeling these worms within your body, and you think that you're dying and end up doing so. This story actually has a Russian version of it, and then there is included an English translation of it. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because the Russian I actually had translated into English using Google, and the Russian itself ends up having more included when it's translated in English versus the English translation that is actually provided in the video itself, or in the actual page itself, I should say. The English translation ends up being significantly shorter, and it ends up being a more concise version of the story. And the reason that this is very strange is because when you go through, a lot of the story ends up being the same even when you translate it to English and then you have the English translation provided. But then certain things will be brought up and elaborated upon more, just like how the codec being it the way that it is, it has to be the OGG for it to be dangerous. That is not covered quite as well in the English translation. Another thing that is kind of strange when you look at it is when you look at the video, it's not very intimidating on its own, but when you have the story with it, it tends to have a more chilling factor to it. But then you read the story and it kind of gets confusing. The English translation that is provided, it states that after these employees have found this video, they actually go through and listen to it. And after about 30 seconds, these people end up like losing their mind, and they mentally become unstable, and they start screaming that there are worms within them, that they're these hellish worms. And in the English translation provided, it says that they are eaten from the inside, and the body was damaged. And then the leader of this group then gets dismissed for negligence. Now, when you look at the English translation from the Russian, then it goes through and describes things a little bit differently, a lot more is involved. It also kind of states where they find this file. It's found on a deceased programmer's computer. Apparently, he opened it up and actually killed himself on accident. Then it also brings up the fact that when these people die, it says in the Russian translation that there is actually no damage to the bodies after the medical examination is done. So you find yourself confused because the English translation provided says there is damage done, but then you look at the Russian that is converted to English and it says there isn't. So I find myself kind of confused on the matter, but because the English translation doesn't include major points like the actual finding of the video itself, and then also aspects of how how they were trying to take steps to make sure that not everyone within the room during the video being played were dying, and that there were actually points being made to try to save these people before it happens, are not included. Also, you find yourself starting to think that maybe the English translation is not very reliable. And because of that, I actually have to give this story a mediocre rating. The concept of the story itself is actually very strong, and I found it to be very chilling when I first looked over it before I translated the Russian to English, because you have this very short piece of excerpt explaining that there's this video that you have on the screen here, and how it actually ends up killing people by giving them a mental breakdown. Now then you go through and like a mental breakdown, and then these worms kill you from the inside. Like there's nothing that you can do to stop it. But then you break down and you look at the Russian converted to English, and it actually has a different story. There's more included, and because there are contradictions between the translations, and because the English translation ends up being literally 1/3 of the Russian, you find yourself feeling kind of gypped, and that's why I would have to give it a mediocre rating when I'm looking at it, because as much as there are strong aspects that shine through, because there is a negligent part of the English translation taken out, there are parts of the story completely excluded. The translations don't even compare to each other the same way. I find that it hurts the story itself. But I did kind of enjoy the concept, and I definitely want to see if I can find more like this. So I'm definitely going to keep trying to look. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.